One of Sub's biggest supporters has been Jaco van Merwe, head of film arts at Open Window Institute in Centurion. Not only does he have a wealth of knowledge in film, but Jaco also explores other forms of creativity, including music, as part of the bands Bitter Einde and Half Sister, and also poetry with his recently published work also. Jaco, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us and chatting to us today. Let's jump straight into it. As someone who recently completed, or who has completed, a master's degree in audio-visual communication, and somebody who is clearly passionate about film, what drew you to this field, and why do you believe film and filmmaking are important?
Sure. Sorry, my brain went in a million directions there because those are some good questions. I think most of us are drawn to the sort of audiovisual storytelling medium. Children are growing up in front of various screens, busy telling them stories. Humans are obviously hardwired to enjoy narrative. It's kind of the thing that has made us different from the animals, is our ability to imagine and our ability to imagine collectively, to believe various myths like the Lion King or whatever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's one of the most powerful ways to really look. There's two basic things you can do with moving images. You can entertain people, and you can also give people sort of transcendental, life-changing, or just sort of philosophical experiences where they think deeper about who they are and their place in the world. So as a communicator, as an artist, sort of moving images and specifically audiovisual, storytelling has obviously always been appealing to me. I remember like in primary school, one of our projects was to make a short documentary film, and this was in the 90s. So we were using like VHS cameras and stuff, Mm-hmm. And since then the bug has just bit. Like, I remember the story I told was something about the first astronaut. Anyway, I'm now going on a tangent.
Now, Jaco, we have quite a few open window student films in our sub-library, which is very exciting. And I think it's something just a little different from the boring Hollywood-themed films. What in your opinion makes a good film, and why are more experimental films important?
Another good question. I think for a healthy mainstream filmmaking industry that's making, let's say, genre movies or commercial movies which are made to make more money, which, I mean, I think it's Tarkovsky who said, like, film is an unhappy art because it's also a business. Like, almost unlike any other of the art forms, filmmaking is probably the most expensive out of all of the art forms. Like, it costs a lot of money to make films, from small indie films to big budget, massive productions. And obviously people who are putting money into that, expect a return in investment. So you can't blame all the producers and production companies for having a hand in the storytelling or wanting to change the ending or trying to, sell tickets. I mean, that's the history of cinema. But to have a healthy mainstream, you also need to have a healthy underground. You need people who are experimenting, who are testing the parameters of the medium, who are trying things in all the areas. What we sort of do at Open Window Film School is we identify what each student is kind of interested in, and then we try to walk a path with them to develop their voice. If someone really just wants to be a technician, like just really good at holding a camera or perhaps at editing or, one of the various sort of elements of filmmaking, then, we'll sort of help you to become the best that you can at that. But what we're chiefly interested in is that each student develops a voice, mm-hmm. so that there's a sort of unique way of seeing the world that then sort of comes into the art, Like mainstream films will become better if there is a solid underground experimental space. It's just like you can think about it in terms of any art form, like painting or music or poetry or literature. Like, if there aren't people on the edges, like breaking the rules, mm-hmm. then what the sort of mainstream culture is consuming is also usually quite bland. It's not informed by, someone like Michel Gondry or whatever, like just a filmmaker who has played with the medium and then gets a chance or then sort of moves into the mainstream. But there's always something interesting in their work.
You've been teaching for more than 8 years now, right? Now, how do you feel has film changed over the years in you teaching in those 8 years, or you being involved in film?
I think my own exposure to, I want to answer this question specifically in a South African and perhaps African context, but I would say the last 8 years has been quite exciting. I think it's comparable to music, which is the other sort of, entertainment medium, or let's call it art medium, that I'm also quite involved in. But in both of those fields, it's almost like there was a bit of there's like some patches of like these voids, It's hard to describe properly, but it does feel like there's been a couple of catalysts recently that have just caused a new energy to sort of emerge specifically in South African filmmaking. If I sort of off the top of my head think of some of the best films that have emerged, in the last 10 years, you could say, it just feels like there's a larger body of work that is doing interesting kind of socio, cultural commentary, and is sort of poking at the ideology of our very complex nation and telling good stories at the same time. And that wasn't really the case. Like if you try look for auteurs, for example, in the history of South African cinema, they're rare and they're hard to find. We don't have a very rich tradition of well-known filmmakers who are both experimenting but also sort of making powerful cinema. I mean, one of the few people who might qualify for that in the history of South African cinema is a guy called Jans Rautenbach, who made films in the 1970s. I mean, he died recently, I think in like 2014, he passed away. But I mean, the fact that very few people have even heard of Jans Rautenbach as one possible example of like a South African auteur already just tells you something about the way that people in South Africa generally think about cinema, which is, it's genre movies, it's entertainment. It's like, I want to be immersed in some big sort of, special effects spectacle or whatever. Obviously, I'm generalizing. But I think recently there has been a really good series of films from, it's kind of name dropping, but films that have been interesting, like The Wound or Johnny Isn't Doetney or Sink, or just off the top of my head, there's actually lots more that we discuss and that we view. Canary is another good one recently. There's a lot of really good cinema currently being made, and also in the short film medium, which is really encouraging and exciting to see. That's obviously part of what Open Window does. I like that you said some of the Open Window films seem to be more interesting. I think that's true. Over the last couple of years, our honors students specifically are producing some really good work, and these films are being entered into festivals all over the world, and we're seeing some really nice interest in South African voices, because man, like South Africa is it's one of the most exciting places to live if you're a storyteller. There's like a story in every corner of this building, never mind, moving out into the street, just in this like 100-meter radius around us, there's like a million interesting stories. So if you're a good storyteller, you're lucky if you were born in South Africa.
It has been said that a film is a representation of a culture, of a country. What is the importance of nurturing our young filmmakers and investing in the future of films made in our country?
Well, again, I feel like this question, there's a lot to say, but I think I'll try and answer it in the context of what SUP is doing. Platform is really important. I remember as a musician growing up, there used to be a TV channel that existed, where if you had a music video, you knew you could send it to that TV channel as well as YouTube and other platforms. And you feel that void when something like that disappears, just because the infrastructure, well, firstly, everybody's kind of in intense information overload mode, because we've all got a million podcasts and a million, YouTube channels and video essays and, music, and everyone's plugging something, and it's this very, very quick instant gratification culture. So what SUP is doing is valuable because it's a platform that's always there. It's a space where people who have completed work and who are new, emerging young filmmakers, people who are trying to make films for the first time, whatever, have a platform, something to aim at more than just putting it on YouTube and feeling lost. There's the thing I've put out and I don't know what to do with it now. So that's from the filmmaker's perspective. It's just a good platform. And usually with these kinds of things, sort of unity creates, strength. Like you get more reach because someone's already there, like a member, and then your film joins the group. So from the filmmaker's perspective, that's obviously a good thing. And I think from the viewer's perspective, what's great about Sub is that it's a whole range of different viewing experiences, and most of them are quite short. So whatever you happen to be doing, if you're just looking for something that's been curated, and then I think that it's sort of listed in categories and stuff like that, it's just a nice space to find some good short film experiences. And I think the platform will help to nurture young filmmakers and the filmmaking industry.
Now, Jaco, the advent of video on demand streaming and more recently COVID has obviously had an enormous impact on filmmaking and audience habits, right? Now, the development of Sub was a reaction to the struggle of those in the film industry, and it functions as a platform for local filmmakers. What do you feel? What do you think is the future of film?
It's a good question. I mean, there's many writers and filmmakers who are wondering whether cinema is dying. The act of going to the cinema as this sacred sort of, almost like a ritual, and you enter the church and then the lights dim, and it's this ritual that people do collectively, that was already sort of under threat before COVID, and now but I'm kind of excited to see. Firstly, more sort of independent cinemas and like smaller places to watch films. Like, at our film school, we also have an auditorium, and I've had some of my most transcendental viewing experiences in that space. And of course, we're sitting here at the Bioscope as well, which is another example of. I've had some amazing experiences at the Bioscope myself. It seems that cinema, in the way that it used to function in the 20th century, at least, is evolving. It seems that, obviously people are more into series, or the sort of addiction of having a narrative arc that keeps you in a 10 episode loop, and sort of, you can really see character development happening over like 8 hours in a series instead of 1.5 hours, and this kind of thing. But it's still filmmakers who are making that work, and who still, you just have to kind of reconsider the format that you're busy with. I think short films will always remain important as kind of proof of concept. Like a lot of filmmakers begin with short films, which they kind of use as almost like business cards to say, this is what I've done and this is how it can become something else, or here's like 3 short films that I've made to get a sense of my sensibility as a filmmaker. A good example would be like Neil Blomkamp made a film called Alive in Joburg, which is like this 5-minute movie, which then became essentially District 9. So it's like a super low budge version of what District 9 became, but it's got all the same kind of things, mixing found footage with like news reels and these aliens who are kind of made to be repulsive, and exploring the sort of racial divisions and like xenophobia and all these things. That's already happening in that little 5-minute short film, as well as a quick showcase of his sort of, special effects techniques. And it's really cool to watch that short film after you've seen District 9 and all the other stuff that Blomkamp has made in the meantime. And you can trace the roots, and it all began with a really well-made short film.
Why do you think should viewers take the trouble to support new initiatives like Sub?
Well, I mean, we've been speaking about the sort of moving image industry of South Africa this whole time, just sort of in different contexts. But I think what Sub is it's a nice mixture of a type of patronage where you are a supporter, you're investing in something, larger than just your own entertainment. So it's not like any of the other streaming platforms in that sense, because there you're just paying to get stuff. Here you're paying and you're getting stuff. You're getting exposure to what a whole bunch of filmmakers are doing, but you also have the sense that you're supporting people. Because I think there's SUP is looking at doing a whole bunch of different things, branching out into collaborations and like a little film festival and sort of, giving awards. So there's cultural capital that's being generated by the website. So it's not just about entertainment. So that's why I like it. It's a good model. It's beneficial both to the person supporting as well as to the artist who then at least have a bit of a platform. Like we said earlier, filmmaking is expensive, and once you've made a film and then it's kind of out there, it's really hard to get those sort of passive income streams going as a musician or as a filmmaker, as an artist at this point. So I'm really excited to see if this model, how this model is going to develop.
Yeah. So as a new concept, we are still working at growing awareness and obviously building relationships. But would you, as Jaco, recommend SUP to young filmmakers out there?
I definitely would recommend SUP to young filmmakers. It's kind of one of those times in the world now where we have to make things happen. There's a lot of innovation happening across all of the arts. We have to create the platforms that we want to use. There's a lot of sort of democracy in the way that works. So SUP is, for me, sort of one of the fruits of that way of thinking. Like, there's a gap in the infrastructure, there's a void, there's like a lack of support in many ways. Let's build that support. What would it look like? What would we want it to look like as filmmakers? And as film viewers, I think it's important that all the people who sign up to be filmmakers also think of themselves as viewers and use the platform to, build relationships, like you said, but also expose yourself to lots of different things. I definitely recommend it because I think, there's a whole ton of open window films on there already. And I'm also looking forward to, all the films in the future and seeing how, we can interweave these things.
Do you have any word of advice or any thoughts of advice for young aspiring filmmakers?
For me, one of the most important things about filmmaking and the arts in general is to keep experimenting, to keep playing with the medium, to collaborate, to think critically, and to try and make work that is true to the thing that's in you that wants to express itself. Like, the things that irritate you in society, that's what you should be zooming in on. The things that make you feel alive, the things that you're in love with, those are the things you should be turning into stories, because that's your voice. You're the only one who can tell that story. So don't give up. Like, you're going to hit your head against the wall a million times. And, all of the best success stories are people who didn't give up. Like a bitter einde, someone who's like a diehard who doesn't fucking stop.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice.
Jaco, thank you so much, man.
Pleasure,
really appreciate that you took some time to be here. We're looking forward to more of your students' films from Open Window.
Yes.
And thank you. Good luck with everything you take on in the future.
Thanks, you too, man.